Firstly, my name is Abaseh Mirvali, and I'm the director of the Museum of Contemporary Art, Santa Barbara. And I thank all of you for taking time today to join us in the second presentation of exhibition makers. And in particular, I'd like to thank my panelists for coming here today. As you all know, this specific panel, Exhibition Makers, was something that that I came up with because I find that often people are not in the know of what it takes for us to put the exhibitions and do what we do on for the public. And kind of the behind the scenes stories are not only fun and informative, they give a glimpse into our life because it makes it fun. And I think the first iteration, we had most of our technical team, the curatorial for exhibitions manager and associate curator. We had the lead prep from SBMA. We had the curator of architecture and design from UCSB. And we all kind of talked about how we put on exhibitions and the mishaps and the moments, and that was kind of wonderful. So we thought for this iteration, having an exhibition at our museum that is focusing on film and photography and portraiture. We're so lucky in town to have a colleague, Wylie, who is over at the SBMA Museum and is an expert. And so it was only natural that I put together a panel taking advantage of having such wonderful talent in the city. I believe most of you are all familiar with Professor Dick Hebdige, who's accompanied us and is very present in this entire room. He is part of 20 Cigarettes, I'm sorry to say. He's back there in an image. He is also one of the readers, so his book is featured right here and has a close relationship with James, but has such a tremendous career, and we're really looking to focus on what you've done. And we're really thrilled to invite, this is the first time I get to hear her speak publicly since she arrived in town. Shana Moulton is now a professor at UCSB in the art department, and which is really exciting. But I've known about, and many people have known about her work from before, and we're just really thrilled to have her amongst us now. So this is really great. So as I wrote to my panelists this morning, this is a conversation, and I wrote to you all that I would love for each of you to start, and I'll start with you, Shana, to just give a brief overview of what it is that you do, and how you came to your field, and what made you, what are the passions that led you to picking what you're doing today?
Sure, thank you. Is this
Here.
Oh. Thanks, Abaseh, and thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. I got to perform here. I don't know if you know this or if I told you that, but I performed here in 2011, I think, as part of the Performance Art Series. Yes, thank you. So it's great to be back, and wonderful to join this community. And my art is mainly video and performance, as well as some installation. It largely revolves around an alter ego that I formed when I started to make video. And the body of work I'm still working on began when I was in graduate school around 2001. And how I came to that, well, I suppose it started with my undergrad education. I was majoring in anthropology and art, and decided that I didn't want to have to narrow anything down, and so performance art was the best way to approach my varied interests. And I didn't really realize at the time that there was such a thing as video art in the mid-90s. And growing up, I had almost no exposure to contemporary art. Twin Peaks was probably my first art experience, Peavy's Playhouse. So it wasn't until later when I realized that that making moving image work appealed to me, and as opposed to film, which I loved, I never saw myself as a filmmaker because at least then all filmmakers or most filmmakers were men, and the film industry was so male, so I didn't really see myself in that world. But then when I learned about the history of video art, I saw so many amazing female video artists. So that's one of the reasons I was interested in that. Also because I could do all of every aspect of the production myself, editing, I act in the videos, I make the costumes and create the sets. So that's how I entered into video. It was also because at the time when I was in graduate school, I didn't know how I would get my work into the world. And I was familiar with a few artist collectives who were posting their videos online. And this is before YouTube. They were making QuickTime videos and posting those on their websites. And I'm thinking of a collective called Paper Rag, and another one called Zero TV. And so I thought that was a great way to put my work out there, having no idea how I would interface with a gallery or a museum. So that's basically how I got started with video and performance. In my performance, I interact with video projections, so they're very interconnected. And then I formed my practice in graduate school for the most part.
Great. Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I grew up in Chicago, went to the Art Institute from an early age, and then the Museum of Contemporary Art. And my aunt, was a painter. She got a degree at the University of Illinois in the late 40s, and so there was a professional artist in the family. I remember going to the Art Institute from a very early age, and then seeing the Rauschenberg retrospective with Monogram, which is the goat with a tire around it, and I still don't know what that means, and I loved that experience. I was with my brother. He had come home from college, and I cut swim team practice to go downtown to see that, and the coach was very angry. So I just continued along and just have been very interested in a whole wide range, I think because of the experience at the MCA, but also at the Art Institute, being very interested in contemporary art. And my focus in photography came from a year internship at the J. Paul Getty Museum in the Department of Photographs. And my brief there that Weston F. gave me was to catalog their 1,200 August Zonder photographs. And he was a very important early 20th century German photographer, and that kind of, because I spoke a little bit of German, that's why he hired me, and so that kind of set my path in terms of my interest in German art. And so I went from the Getty to Lanham Foundation, where there was a Gerhard Richter 18 October 1977 show, which for me was really interesting because it was based in photographic material, non-fine art photographic material, that he based the newspaper clippings about the death of the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany in 1977. And so there was this interplay between painting and fact and fiction and narrative with this very potent political content. So then I got hired at the St. Louis Art Museum, which has a fantastic German art collection, and did one of Thomas Street's first American Museum shows, which when I moved to Dallas, I did his big retrospective. So the reason I went to Dallas, one of the reasons was at the Dallas Museum of Art, was that there was no separate works on paper department. And so I got to do everything concerning photography, which I did, which was fantastic. And then around 96, the time that you're talking about, my associate curator and I realized that we needed to start collecting media art, which was just at that time gaining mainstream kind of acceptance in a way by the biennials and the big international exhibitions. So one of the first things we acquired was the Bildiola, the Crossing, but then also the first thing I bought was a Rosemary Chalkle, and followed by a very vigorous program in that. So, and I got here 3 years ago, and I'm working with a spectacular collection of 8,000 images, and built up by my predecessors, and I'm very happy to be focusing just on photography right now.
Is this something? I teach and write about art. I'm a professor I'm going to start with what actually pays the bills. I'm a professor in art, film and media studies at UCSB, and I currently chair the art department. So one of the things I've done, I'm proud about, is getting Shana, chairing the committee or being part of that to get Shana here, because that really helps us become contemporary art department. And the appointments for a long time. This is a great addition to the whole matrix in this town. But how did I get to art? I came to it through a route, or route, as you say, which is both circuitous, serendipitous, and weirdly linear. I grew up in London. I was born in 1951, so it's not long after the Second World War. James was born in the Second World War, but in London. And London was something of a bomb site when I grew up. In a sort of multi-generational working class household. I grew up in the 1920s, in the 1950s, and it was a wonderfully exotic upbringing. And I loved being in London. Okay, you're working class, but I had to be in West London. I could get on the bus and go to the British Museum and see, I'm going to check, the Lamassu, the Babylonian winged lions in the British Museum, these gods, that I was more drawn to really than the vapid portrayals of Christ that I saw at Sunday school and so on. And I also went to the exhibition of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1965, I remember that too. But art wasn't part of the milieu. I did actually pass an examination at the age of 11, which got me into what we call a grammar school, which exposed me to an academic education. My brother, who didn't get past that exam at the age of 11, left school at 15. So that is what the class system in Britain was like in those days. And he's done fine. He's more intelligent and more educated than I am because he reads voraciously. So how did I get into art? Well, I did English, language and literature at university in Birmingham. Then after that I did an MA in cultural studies. The totality of my time at university was 5 years. I did a 3-year English degree, then went upstairs to cultural studies to be supervised by this fantastic Jamaican activist, intellectual, scholar, Stuart Hall, in cultural studies. And as soon as I finished that in 1974, I began working in art schools, but not teaching art, teaching everything that wasn't art. There would be 40% of the curriculum was devoted to something else. So we had to fill in for everything, and I could do what I liked. I loved the fact that there wasn't any regulation or supervision of what we did. So I could teach the Western, this is in the 70s, or we could do stuff on music or subculture. And so I would teach one day in Southampton, next day in Portsmouth, Maidstone, Royal College of Art, Maidstone College of Art, Loughborough. I was like a jobbing lecturer, an adjunct, as they say. And I loved it because I didn't have to sit in meetings and do the stuff I do every day now. The other thing I did to support myself was run a sound system in Birmingham, which was basically a big reggae sound system, but we also played funk, ska, classic rock and so on. And we attracted an eclectic audience, which included a lot of black British kids from Hammersworth, at a time when Birmingham, England wasn't that different from Birmingham, Alabama, in that there was de facto apartheid in operation, and the police would arrest people on sus, that was the law's suspicion of being about to commit a crime. So the fact that we were attracting what ended up about 70% black audience in the centre of town was something of a political issue. So from there, in the middle of all that, I wrote a book on subculture and these experiences, but from a very sort of detached theoretical way.
That's kind of the stuff we'd like to know about.
Okay.
This.
You don't want to know about the
No, I do, but it might be, if we go through your very illustrious career, it might.
You have to understand the compost that produces the flower. Because it is, it's very grounded, like with James. You can't detach the life from the other. They grow in a particular soil. So, I should just say that I do consider myself a writer stroke artist rather than a professor stroke thinker. I don't know what I think until I start writing about it. And that, I think, is similar to the way in which artists go about working, that you immerse yourself in something to such a degree that you're possessed by it, and you have to detach and choose how to organize it. And I think an exhibition is a rhetorical exercise. I've got this book by Bruce Ferguson and Saint-Hilaire and so on, and so I should also include Lisa Greenberg, which started exhibition studies, and that said, Bruce indicates that this is a rhetorical kind of exercise. So it's partly semiotic, it's partly an organisation of elements, a puzzle that you have to try and make sense of. You have to put that together with this and try to understand why he's referencing these particular businesses in Alabama. Why he's got red Indian potatoes, why he's got a quilt that's based on what the G's Ben sharecroppers, black sharecroppers made, with the photographs and the portraits. So it's semiotic, it's also performative in that it affects us. We're moved by it, we're bored by art, we're outraged by art, but it kind of works with us viscerally, and I like to try to write so that it hits people viscerally, rather than just, so I don't write about stuff, I write through stuff. And that's probably why I'm lucky enough to have ended up in an art department. And so after teaching in this journeyman kind of capacity, I finally got a job at Goldsmiths College. I was there for 10 years. Then I came to the States in '92 and to be the Dean of Critical Studies at the California Institute of the Arts. I was there for 9 years. Running that program, which provided the undergraduate non-studio education for all the kids in that school, about 1,500 kids, and set up a writing program, not a fine writing program or a critical writing program, just a writing program. I was trying to just say writing is like art. You don't define it by some fantasy of what it should be. You've got a material language, you do anything you want with it. So that was the idea. Then I was fortunate enough to move from Cal Arts and be invited to come to UCSB, where I was the director of the Interdisciplinary Humanities Centre for 7 years and the co-director of the UC Institute of Research for the Arts, which was distributing grants for using money from the University of California Office of the President to all the other campuses where there are art programs to support something like 250 programs over a period of years. So that's how I ended up here.
Thank you, Dick. We'll go through. Charlie. It would be lovely to hear a little bit as a fellow curator what your personal approach to putting together an exhibition is.
Oh, these are the questions that you said.
I did. I did. No, but it would just be nice to hear a fellow, we were lucky enough to have 3 different perspectives alongside mine. So it would be nice to hear about how you put together an exhibition and how you balance your vision with that of the artist, and particularly because you do work with archives of artists that have deceased that I've never done a curated show, so I'm very curious about that. And then it would just be nice to know how you are dealing with the kind of the new media,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've always worked in, quote unquote, encyclopedic museums, and so there's always been a relationship between historical material and contemporary material. Even though I was a contemporary art curator, I worked a lot, as I mentioned, in photography and new media. And I like, one of the pleasures of working as I have is working with contemporary artists and having them come to the museum and walking through the museum with them. And that has always been a real pleasure, because they will respond to things and have insights into areas of the collection that, of course, none of us ever thinks about, given an artist's insight into art of all kinds. So now it is interesting because I have been working with a lot of artists who have not only just passed, but are older. And actually this fall, we're going to have a show on the earliest photography ever made, from 1840 to 1860, from the Wilson Center for Photography. And that, to me, is a learning curve. And that's one of the reasons I did it, actually, because I think that if you just continue to do the same things over and over again, of course, you never learn anything, and you never get challenged. And in terms of how photography was established at that time, what its conventions were and are, how it was theorized, what it showed, and also just the very mechanics of it, which I think are really quite fascinating too. To me, that was a very wonderful field to enter. So in terms of balancing a vision, when I'm working with a living artist, there's questions of capacity, how much an institution can take on or not. Is there a catalog? Is it going to tour? Are you going to buy something from the show? Is it a new body of work? And in terms of media, at the St. Louis Art Museum where I worked, I did the first media show they had done for, 14 or 15 years, and then when I got to Dallas, it was the same kind of thing. And so I was placing media in the context of a contemporary art program. Again, we didn't have a separate program for photography and new media. And so that was very exciting, because there was no one else to get an approval from. But there also it was a much kind of broader sense of non-categorical thinking. And so it all became part of what was going on at the moment. And that was very exciting. So, do you want me to continue with the question, or?
Yeah, because I'm also curious, how does it work with you at SBMA, at your museum, and kind of the shows that you put together?
Right. Well, yeah, I just did 2 collection-based shows. One that was based on, as I said, this wonderful collection, excuse me, that had been assembled by my predecessors, and it really is like a kid in a candy store, because there's so many great photographs in the collection. And when we're under renovation right now, we're going to be open in about a year with the main part of the building, and it's very exciting, and you all have to come. So what we're doing now is I am focusing on, as are my colleagues, focusing on the permanent collection. And so I did 2 big permanent collection shows, one of which was called Brought to Light, that brought to light a lot of things that hadn't been seen before. And in a collection of 8,000 objects, you're not going to see everything at all times. So that was really phenomenal. And then I just closed a show on recent gifts of color photography, and that all had come in the last 2 years. And so there was a balance there between historical material and some contemporary, and then contemporary work that was all in color, and some of which, someone walked in and they said, I thought this was a photo show, this looks like a painting show. And so that was the whole idea, was to kind of cross boundaries that way. But I also did this a small installation on Manuel Alvarez Bravo, and that was wonderful because I've always loved Bravo's work. We have 40 of his works. And again, I knew his work, but not as well as I know it now. And so that's the benefit of doing something, quite honestly. And then if you become interested in an artist, and it's the real thing, when you continue your conversations with them, you want to become part of that project and get the work out there and have other people receive it as well. So that's part of what it is.
Thank you. Shana, I mentioned to you when we did a studio visit with you that the new media work that you do originally, when I started curating, was a challenge for me, and so I started embracing it and trying to understand it and incorporate it into the language. I find that the next generation of curators, the younger curators, embrace it so much more naturally than I do. But one of the things that I really appreciated when looking at your work, and it was interesting to hear that you shied away from going towards filmmaking because it was such a male-dominated industry, and you went towards new media, but you also you used a lot of humor, and I find it, which is witty, and I'm very envious of that always, because I think that skipped me. I just think that's so smart to be able to have kind of the intelligence and the humor. Are those also very purposeful? You use that in your work? Can you talk to us about your work and how you come towards it in this multidisciplinary fashion?
I suppose I should also mention a bit of my compost was having grown up in a mobile home park between Fresno and Yosemite. And so, the process of becoming an artist just was never something on the horizon for me.
Right.
And I should also mention that before Twin Peaks, there was Santa Barbara. That was really, very formative for me. And so the nature of my videos.
You and everybody in Europe.
Yes.
It's amazing. I mean, I was just in Italy and like, Santa Barbara. And I was like, goodness.
I just read an article about why Santa Barbara made Donald Trump more appealing to people living in Russia. The soap opera.
Oh my gosh.
But it was my one and only soap opera growing up. And so that's been the format of my video series.
This says so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, part of the reason I was so excited to move here, but I embrace both, the kitsch of that and the true aspirational aspect of wanting to live that kind of life. And for me, that sort of tension between those kinds of opposites is where lies a lot of humor. And in my work, I also address a lot of things like New Age spirituality and beauty and cosmetics, and that sort of aspiration towards, perfection. It's in the spirit and in the body, and how impossible that is, or pathetic that can be sometimes, especially, coming from someone in my demographic. But I think I try to find the humor in that as a way to redeem some of these things. Yes, that's...
What is the process? How do you...
of making the work? Well, it's usually putting together a lot of fragments. So at the moment, I'm working on a show, and I just have fragments of what the main video will be. And right now, the fragments are circular sunglasses with crop circles in them, and chemtrails behind me. And then, actually, I was looking into Saint Barbara and that story, and the idea of women who have been trapped in towers, and using that in this video, and then reverse paper shredding as a sort of metaphor, or poking fun at machine learning. So that's what I have, and somehow I'll construct a narrative out of those things.
And how do you now reconcile your work with teaching? Because when I came to see you, when Alex and I came to see, actually Sarah, all three of us were up there to see you, you also had the show of your students. How do you kind of set, how do you negotiate that boundary between your work and then what you are now imparting as a professor?
Well, I really want the students to see how exciting it can be to make work. So whatever I do in the classroom, it's, showing them ways or showing them what excited me at their age, or even later. So in a video class, we also looked at ways that video projection can be, installed or performed with. And in order to make them, especially excited about that, I brought my projector to the class, which is a lot stronger than what we have on campus at the moment, which we'll remedy soon. Just
Thank
so
God, because then we can borrow from you as well.
Yeah, rent.
Dig collaboration.
So it's, at their age, I thought most of contemporary art was really weird. I thought it was very bizarre. I didn't get it, and I see that in their eyes when I'm showing them a lot of the kind of work that I'm drawn to. So, I'm just constantly looking for ways to get them excited about contemporary works and see what is possible and see that even if they're not from a wealthy background, that they can become an artist.
I think that's really wonderful. In some ways, we're trying to do the same here with particularly the internship program and our ELA program to get more people excited about being in the pipeline of the different jobs within the museum. From there's two students that are with us that want to be artists. The rest want to be on the working side of the thing. So it's important to be able to excite them. I think that's really great that you do that. Dick, you've written a lot about youth and subculture and style, and I'm curious where that fascination came for you to write about that. And then, given that we have the luck that you and James share this kind of journey that you guys have traveled together, it would be lovely to kind of maybe if you would share some anecdote about an intersection, given that you were in 20 Cigarettes, you're in Readers, to maybe relate some of that. Give us a little bit of background on those works.
Well, the book that I wrote about subculture, youth culture, style. I was young, I was interested in a subculture, and I had style.
You had style and
So I was in it. I had an existential investment in it, and the version of cultural studies that was being developed in Britain under Stuart Hall and his predecessor, Richard Hogger, had a very strong autobiographical element in it. It wasn't just memoir. It was trying to connect your life, the particularities of your life, to larger collectives and larger experiences, cultural experiences. That's what culture is, for sharing. So Hogger was very concerned with growing up in Leeds in the Depression as a working class scholarship boy. And Stuart became more and more interested as he got older in the politics of identity, which you could distinguish from identity politics, where he was actually looking at his own formation as a black intellectual coming to the mother country and going to Oxford and finding that he wasn't at home. So, I actually grew up in West London in the 50s and 60s, so, in the 70s, punk and Mary Kwan and all that stuff was happening just at the other end of the King's Road. So it's the opposite, really, of what Shana's saying. That's why I could go to the British Museum and worship Babylonian gods, because it was there. Whereas, you were at another kind of disadvantage. So the economic thing, it's interesting, I think, to look at these things. But the fact that you took this serious and absolutely dedicated, yet seriously playful approach to make it is something I can share with that, because as I say, I don't write summarizable arguments. I just work with the material and work through it and try and put this together with that. So the work I was doing on subculture wasn't just about who wore what or what bands were playing. It was trying to connect that to the conjuncture of the time in Britain that I was writing, which was between 1976 and 1979, which this circus-like phenomenon of punk just happened to have taken off. I was commissioned to write a book. I was supposed to write a book about, I was originally asked to write a book about black British subculture. I said, well, I can't do that, I'm not black. I can write a kind of ghost or surrogate race relations history, looking at the different youth cultures and how they related to the immigrant presence as it was coming in the 60s. And how they related to Caribbean music, black soul and so on. But then, after I signed the contract, suddenly the Sex Pistols arrived, and it was off. And it was the biggest revolution. I lived through 68 all that, I was a bit young. But punk was much more of a cultural revolution as far as I was concerned, because it affected everything. And it was fantastic to live through, and I learned so much by seeing how this kind of weird, what seemed to be a spontaneous insurgency, though it was also framed to some degree and engineered to some degree by art school educated people. Malcolm McLaren, Vivian Westwood both went to Goldsmiths College, and it wasn't an ignorant response. It was I was fortunate to be writing into that, and really that book, and I've got the Serbo-Croat translation of the book, which was the first translation. It's a vanished language. Serbo-Croat no longer exists now that Yugoslavia is local. And that one came out in 1980. And this is the last translation, which came out last year, the first Portuguese translation. So I've been fortunate enough to write, between the ages of 25 and 29, this thing that's made my whole life, I have to say. I've travelled the world on this rather slim volume, and it's only 150 pages with 50 pages of notes. I like the idea of brevity. And now I write stuff that nobody reads in catalogues, sometimes catalogue essays on, James or Takashi Murakami or whatever, usually men, I will admit, Jean-Michel Basquiat. That are longer than the book, but the great thing is nobody reads them. I'm released from that obligation to try and find an audience, because this thing is still travelling around and moving into these different, that's the miracle. Contemporary art's a bit like that. I think it travels. And I get to travel behind it, though I had no clue how adequate or glorious or, or meaningful the translations are. Because I'm a miserable monolingualist. I speak English, American, and kind of Cockney. That's it. So that's how that evolved. Now with James, James connected to me when I came to Cal Arts, because he was on the search committee, and I gave a talk when I came about the guy who lived opposite me in Hackney at the time, a Cypriot guy, who was a beautiful man, who owned a Lincoln town car, which this is in England, and it was like a religious object. And it was all about the relationship between this man and his car. And James, of course, is a car person, connected to that. And he came up to me and said, I really like your talk, but how come you can speak so well when you come to where you do? Because I was reading it out, the talk. So we began this conversation. And he was like brother, slightly older brother. And he I'd left England because I found the English art scene incredibly claustrophobic. And the whole of English culture, to be honest, very claustrophobic. You've got low style. It takes Turner to make something of English life. It's amazing. But you've got this low lid on everything, including the art world in those days. Until punk came along and blew it open, to be honest. I mean, you think about Damien Hirst and those people, and they've got limitations in the young generation, their contemporaries, but they were doing punk like 10 years later, 1988 and so on. And that was it, that was what made it exciting. But, you know, the theory stuff that people they were trying to tame art with theory, and I just couldn't stand it, you know, because I went to the art school to get away from some of that regulating language. Now, I'm not against theory, but I'm not a theorist myself. I don't find it generates my practice. It doesn't. So, people like Victor Bergen, who were very influential and had lots of. I just couldn't get into it. I just thought it was just an attempt to contain, something. And while art is situated, it can be situated within language. It can't be controlled by language, tamed or disciplined by language. So, coming to America, I was coming home. I'd watch westerns on TV from the age of about 5, all through the 50s. I'd listen to American music more or less exclusively. And I watched Twin Peaks in Britain. So it was like coming home to this light. In a way, James Benning was the quintessential, European romantic idea of an American artist. Old school. And rigorous, cool, and somewhat skeptical about certain forms of articulation. So it was like Boucher and that kind of 60s, 70s thing. And he kind of adopted me and helped me become the American that I now am. So, that was a very fortuitous thing. And during the earthquake in 1994, because I was a dean, I was given a hazmat suit to go into Calais, which had been taped off, because it was full of asbestos, to retrieve a Fisher-Price video camera, which was a duplicate of the one he gave to his daughter, Sadie Bennett, who was a great punk contemporary artist. I mean, she is a chip of the old block, and, absolutely as big a name as James. So
she's actually more known in certain circles.
Yeah. So,
but your connection to 2 films in this exhibition that you're in.
I was embarrassed when they were competing.
Because I wanted.
Yeah. No, I'm in them. I find them hard to watch. I find James's films hard to watch anyway, but I love watching them. I love being made to.
What do you find hard about watching them?
I don't like watching myself.
Well, other than yourself, there's 19 other people in the film.
Because, the static image is just, I'm going to read something at the end if we get time, about time and James and how he slows things down. I mean, it's difficult. I would love it if you projected those films on a loop. But the idea of having to sit down and watch James's film, I just don't think that's art. That's something else. That's an exhibition issue.
I will hand this over, so you can't speak. I will tell you all that Dick and I had a heated, passionate conversation in a very cool, quirky bar up in Colita. What was the name of the place? Imperial. Where Dick was had issues with my exhibition and how I chose not to show the 2 films in the exhibition in the main space, rather show them as works in the space next to this room and in other venues around town. So we have an exhibition disagreement, but this is how open I am to criticism. So I heard. And I know I'm showing them over there, so that was a change I made for you. So they're now in that room. They loop after.
Well, when James sort of moved out of independent cinema into the art scene, I think that's the transposition.
Right. But that,
translation,
it's
you know,
true,
and
but,
it goes with all the other projection work.
yeah, so,
But you know,
so I can expand on that, because I'll say something, but I do want to share some anecdotes, and I want to hear some behind the scenes stories, because I wanted to tell a story about this show, which people don't know much about. But Charlie, I want you to share first with us a bit of an experience working with an artist and getting through maybe a challenging exhibition, and then I want to hear from you working with us. Because that's the beauty of having kind of all of us in the room and then opening it up to you all to be able to, you know, I mean, I have to say that it worked gorgeously with James. I couldn't be more blessed in this situation. So my artist is happy with the exhibition layout and the curatorial work. And so what was a 10-year journey for me to get this exhibition? I am very pleased, because I wanted to do a portraiture show without having the background that Charlie has, from a very specific lens, not wanting to focus on him as a filmmaker, but wanting to focus on James as a contemporary artist, and also a social commentary, you know, an advocate of social issues. And I think what was beautiful about the way that our dialogue evolved is the Alabama project, which is a project that is near and dear to my heart, that I heard when I came up to the lecture up at the university my first week in town, was something he wasn't open to sharing, because he felt that that body of work should all be shown together under that specific context. And I thought, through that relationship of curator and artist, I was able to dialogue with them and let him see that they were portraiture as well. And as a result, I have these beautiful 7 boxes and these beautiful quilts, for which I'm eternally grateful. So I thought that was a beautiful moment. But I would love to hear a story from you, Charlie, and then from you the other way around with us.
Excuse me. I had a really great time working with Richard Tuttle on his retrospective installation at the Dallas Museum of Art. And so Richard, I can't remember if I picked him up or if he came, but he was walking up the stairs to my office, and he had a pillowcase with him, as well as a backpack. And he said, can I put these things in your office? And I said, sure. I said, what's in the pillowcase? And he said, oh, it's my snake. So I said, great. So we put the snake, and he said, he won't make any noise, and he's probably asleep now. So it just went from there. It was just this wild and wonderful journey. And the retrospective was absolutely staggeringly beautiful, and he had a hand in everything. He was there for 2 weeks, and every morning when I woke up, I thought, you know what, I get to work with Richard Tuttle today. And it was a great, great experience, but it was so funny because there was so much work in the show itself, you know, because Tuttle, his work in later years, all these little parts and pieces and different kinds of, you know, he installed the walls where the drawings were going on. It was this real complex installation, and so we didn't have it done by the time of the opening. And so I had this very, very conscientious intern who was losing her mind because we put the drawings up in a way that wasn't correct on the labels. And so I just had to talk her down and say, you know what, no one's gonna notice, no one will know except you. And even if Richard knows, he's gonna be totally cool with it, don't worry about it. And so what we're doing is we're running around, you know, trying to get everything, including, this is a really glamorous side of the art world. We had this big sculpture garden in Dallas, and you know, one of the things that we had to do was go around and pick up all the cigarette butts right before the, before the opening starts, right? And so art world is so glamorous. So we're doing this thing, you know, drawings are all this, that, and the other. We didn't get everything done, didn't everything, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden at 6 o'clock, people are starting to arrive and all the lights start to go off in the museum. Because the museum is actually, the structure is owned by the city of Dallas, even though it's a private kind of operation. So it's got this ramp that kind of goes down this way, and the lights are starting to go out like one after the other so that the museum is in complete darkness. And so there are people walking through the door at that point. And so we had to call the city and get them to, because what had happened is someone hadn't informed the city, and every night at 6 o'clock the lights go out. So we had to just, we had to call someone at the city and say, please turn the lights back on. And, but it was, it was funny, and we all had a good laugh, and that was, there were other things that an artist objected to, wall label that I had done. I didn't pass it by this person, and so we had to remove the wall labels. It wasn't just wall label, it was vinyl. You know about that. And then we had to pulp the brochure. So that was not a happy day, but yeah.
Shana, how is it working with us, and how have you found working with curators when you're putting together exhibitions?
Well, it's very different, and because I tend to say yes to almost everything, I've had a really wide range of experiences. And at the moment, I'm working on 2 shows, and they're in high contrast to each other. The one I was describing this video idea for is, they've been very transparent with the budget. I know exactly what I'm getting into. The curator sends me a lot of positive reinforcement, when I finally send them my drafts or ideas. And that's in London. And then I'm also working on a piece for the Lyon Biennial. And they said that they wanted me to make a public sculpture and then a sculpture in the main indoor space. And I agreed to do this, but then once I agreed, they kept coming at me with more and more limitations. And so now neither of the works can include video or performance, which is my main thing. And so I keep sending them proposals for the public sculpture and then the indoor sculpture, and then I don't hear from them for 2 weeks, and then I get an email that says urgent, they need to see changes this way or that way, within the next day. So it's a very different.
How do you mediate that?
Well, I do feel like I'm not sure if my vision will come across in the piece in Lyon. So I do worry about that, but at the same time, it's a really great opportunity for me to do something on that scale.
Did you know the curator?
Yeah, and I worked with her at the Palais de Tokyo, and I'd done a large installation there that did include video, but I think based on the installation, they thought I would be able to make a public sculpture and a really large-scale sculpture indoors. But it's just, I don't know what the materials, I don't have the modeling skills, so it's definitely been challenging. I think what will happen is they will produce something, they will have to make a lot of the material decisions and the modeling on their own, and hopefully it will work out okay.
Wait, you're putting it in their hand to make that decision?
Yes, because I don't know what it takes to create a large, 6-meter high public sculpture. I have no experience there, so I'm letting them decide what materials will work best for my drawing.
That's wow. That's generous.
I feel like it's a bit of a collaboration.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever feel like your work as a curator is also a collaboration, but I felt like that with a lot of shows.
I think in the best scenarios it is that, and I think that you have a few things to say about that as well. But no, would you agree, Charlie? We very much think it's a road that you travel together. And particularly on the technical stuff, that's why the first iteration of Exhibition Makers involved the entire technical team, because really they become a part of you making your work and presenting it in the best fashion. So it takes a team to kind of bring it to life.
I had just one thing. In regards to that, also artists can surprise you wonderfully, because I commissioned Tatsuo Miwajima to do an installation as a commission at the Dallas Museum of Art. He works with electronics and numbers, LED numbers. And I had seen his retrospective at the Fort Worth Modern that my colleague Mike Lopping had done, and everything was basically on the wall, where he had these little cars that were running around as well, which was fantastic. So I was thinking, I gave him the dimensions of the space that I wanted him to work in, and I was thinking of this wall piece, and I was telling everyone about it as the commission, and then he comes back and it's on the ground. And it's on the ground of the floor, and it's totally marvelous and wonderful, and I couldn't have loved it more. But it was just kind of like, you had to switch gears and just say, okay, well, how can we make that happen? Which I was really happy to do.
Dick, maybe I was intrigued when you said that you're a writer/artist, so maybe with you saying something about that, and I guess you want to read, to say something, a favorite moment or story about your time with James that you would like to share with us. Well, you're going to read something.
I'm going to read something.
Well, and then we'll open it to questions. Okay.
I can't really recall. I did attack. I attacked James with a strawberry once.
Oh, you attacked.
But I won't go into that. I'll just read something about another exhibition context when Douglas Gordon was projecting the searchers in the desert, and this is James' description of that. Because Douglas Gordon was projecting it at a speed that would have taken 7 years to run right through. The projection started at dusk. This is James talking. The nice thing about it is the film plays day and night, and of course you can't see it during the day because it's too bright. And then as the sun sets, the image kind of fades in like a Polaroid, and there's a marvellous point where the blue in the sky starts to blend in with the top of the film frame. So there's this moment where the top of the screen disappears into the landscape. And as it gets darker, of course, the image asserts itself and the colours get brighter and the image gets more distinct and recognisable. Each frame is on the screen for 7.5 minutes, and because it's been digitised, you don't even see any movement from one frame to the next. It just clicks ahead to the next image. And the movement is so slight that one doesn't even register the change. So it started with a close-up of John Wayne's face, and Wayne was talking, so I watched it for the first 2 hours, which gives you only a half second of the film. And during that time, his mouth moves very slightly. And after a while, everybody else went off to see the searchers, projected at normal speed at the local drive-in theatre near the Marine Base in 29 Palms, which was part of the event. But I stayed around because I thought it was more interesting to see this. And I was out there for a couple more hours. I haven't got his voice, I'm sort of a Midwestern kind of twang. And eventually it got completely dark. And it was about 10 at night, and I was sitting there on my own, and a boy of about 11 or 12 came by, and he stood around for a minute looking up at the screen, then across at me, and then he asked me, "How long have you been watching?" And I said, "Oh, about 4 hours." And he said, "Aren't you bored?" And I said, No, sit down and look at the screen. See that piece of dust up there in the top left-hand corner? In exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds, that dust is going to disappear. So he sat down and he looked at the screen, and as 3 minutes came, I said, "Okay, get ready." And 15 seconds later, the next frame came up, the dust disappeared. And he goes, "Oh man, that's so cool." And he started to watch intently, and he asked me, "What's going to happen next?" And I said, "Well, they're up for 7.5 minutes. So what do you think is going to change inside the frame?" And we watched a frame or two and saw how John Wayne's lips curled out a little bit more because he's talking. So after a while, he started to tell me about his life and how he was into skateboarding and what he thought of school. And then he got up and he did some shadow play with the piece. He got in front of the projector and put his shadow on the screen and did stuff like he began picking John Wayne's nose. And after doing that for a while, he came back and sat down, and we watched some more, and all of a sudden, he'd been there a couple of hours, And I said to him, "Aren't you bored?" And he said, "No way, this is great." So the next day I saw Douglas Gordon and we were talking and I told him this story and he said, "So that's your role in life, to go around making structuralists out of people." That's James.
I think that's great. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up and see if you all have any questions. I always kind of think these talks are short because I think there's so much more that we want to talk about. We've started another series where the first iteration, Monica told me I was not able to be here, was really successful. It's called Contemporary Art Unlocked, and it's a forum to be able to come and sit and have a conversation with you all. We really hope that you go out into the world and proselytize in Santa Barbara and beyond to come to the museum and kind of participate in these projects and share the programs that you think will feed your soul in any which way, plus wine, without wine. However you want to. I think that would be helpful to us as we design these programs. I go around saying that we at the Museum of Contemporary Art Santa Barbara, we need to be a partner to the wonderful institutions that are represented here and not duplicate the same things that they do. We are a smaller institution and we should focus on what we can do. And these are conversations or intern program or the Contemporary Art Unlock are things that we can do and we can do them really well. And then our sister organizations can focus on other things that they do well, and we should be a complement to each other. So we're not here to do the exact same thing at SBMA because we want people to go to the SBMA or to go up to the university. They have a wonderful, they have a wonderful museum and they have an exhibition process through the glass box. One of our interns, Evan Moore, just curated a show up there, and the last one, well, you installed it. Yeah, you installed it. But is really involved there. But our job here is to kind of work with this wonderful next generation to have them take over from us more successfully. I want to thank you so much for coming and let you know that I'm extremely thrilled. Our artist that is going to have his solo U.S. debut museum show, Ari Benjamin Myers, just landed in Santa Barbara. We're going to be conducting auditions the next 2 days. And then on Saturday evening, we encourage you all to come back for a glass of wine. You might get a bit of a behind the scenes of wherever we are in that process with our ensemble. We hope to be far. Ari's looking a little, serious. But we hope to really surprise the heck with the local talent that is auditioning the next 2 days to be a part of this ensemble. And then you get to meet Ari, which is really nice. And this is part of a new series we call Coming Soon. So when we have the privilege of having artists that are going to participate in future shows or in town. But we encourage you to go and listen and see Shana and...
in that regard, you should go see the Chris Kallmeyer show.
I'm taking him.
Sorry.
Yes,
everyone should go see the Chris Kallmeyer show.
Everybody should see the Chris Kallmeyer show.
Wonderful colleague Julie Joyce has done. It's a participatory music installation as well. It's all through the summer.
Absolutely. Where can we see it? The next piece of yours a little more locally, not in Lyon, although we're very proud that she's in the biennial in Lyon. And that will open in September,
That's
right?
September, and then in London also in September. The
Perfect.
Ludovich collection.
Fabulous.
But in California, I don't think I have anything coming up.
Well, we can come up and do studio visits. And you will be here tomorrow night introducing a screening of James's show, and we're very grateful to you for your collaboration, even if you don't like being in the things and being watched. We all like it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here.